born September 22nd, 1947. She left this life on February 18th, 2017. Norma was the Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade. In all of American history, it's arguable that the most controversial, divisive, and pernicious Supreme Court decision to have been handed down was Roe versus Wade and its companion case, Doe versus Bolton, issued simultaneously on January 22nd, 1973. These two cases struck down the abortion laws of all 50 states. Roe versus Wade declared that abortion was a fundamental right and that an unborn child had no legal right to the protection of law. Doe versus Bolton defined a woman's health not just as her physical health, but a host of other definitions, such as her emotional and psychological well-being and the condition of her family, and by extension, her financial well-being. Roe and Doe effectively gave women and abortionists the cover that they needed to abort children through all 9 months of pregnancy without fear of criminal charges. The late Sandra Cano was the Doe of Doe versus Bolton. Norma McCorvey was the Roe of Roe versus Wade. Both of them converted to Christ, repudiated their belief in abortion, and sought to overturn the Supreme Court cases that bore their fictitious names. This film deals with Norma McCorvey, or Miss Norma, as many of us called her. I met Norma McCorvey for the second time in 1995, right after her conversion. Over the years, we became close friends, participating in multiple pro-life events together over nearly 2 decades, traveling to multiple cities, talking on the phone, emailing, texting. She even stayed with my family in our home for an entire month during a rough stretch in her life. We're going to share with you some of our memories of Norma's conversion to Christ, as well as her efforts and her legacy to end the killing of children by abortion in America. Norma's early life was chronicled by her in her first book, I Am Roe. I Am Roe is a heartbreaking record of a childhood marred by abuse, followed by years of self-destructive choices. Norma was born Norma Leah Nelson to Olin and Mary Nelson in Simmsport, Louisiana. Her father's mother was a prostitute who ultimately owned and operated a house of ill repute, which Norma visited to see her grandma. Norma's mother was physically beautiful, but cruel and extremely loose in her morals. When Norma was 10, her parents moved to Texas, where they separated and divorced when she was 13 years old. Her mother was verbally and physically abusive. She beat Norma ruthlessly for small childhood infractions. She locked her in a closet for hours. She verbally degraded her mercilessly, calling her vicious names. So Norma decided she needed to run away. She stole money from the till of a service station and with her 10-year-old friend ran away to Oklahoma. When they were apprehended by police and returned to Texas, a judge sentenced her to 1 year in a Catholic boarding school for girls. Norma testified that she was sexually molested by an adult female while she was there. During one of her many conflicts with authorities in the school, she exploded in rage at one of the nuns, who then sent her back to the sentencing judge. She was 11 years old. He sent Norma to a state reform school for girls in Gainesville, Texas, where she spent most of her time until she was 15 years old. Before her conversion, Norma wrote that those years in reform school were the best years of her life. She returned home for good at the age of 15, and the cycle of conflict with her mother started again. This time, her mother sent her to live with a distant male relative in Louisiana. In the 3 weeks that Norma was there, she tells of being raped by him every night until her mother came to visit and saw the horrific shape Norma was in. Norma told her mother everything. Her mother cussed out the man. The relative denied everything and called Norma and her mother whores. Sadly, her mother never pressed charges. She just took Norma home. Norma then started working as a roller skating waitress at an outdoor hamburger joint. It was while working there that she met her future husband, Woody McCorvey. Just after Norma turned 16, they were married. They moved to California. A few months later, when they found out she was pregnant, he beat her viciously, accusing her of being unfaithful, which she was not. Norma filed a complaint with the police and fled back to Texas, again moving in with her mother. She saw Woody McCorvey 2 more times, once at her mother's house while she was pregnant, and once more in the hospital after her baby girl was born, and she never laid eyes on him again. During her pregnancy, she started frequenting a lesbian bar for friendship and acceptance, and slowly became part of that social circle. When her baby girl was born, Norma hoped that she would become a good mother and raise her daughter with some level of normalcy. She never got the chance. Her mother, who was violently opposed to Norma's lifestyle, literally stole Norma's baby. She hid her from Norma and told the police that Norma was an unfit mother. Soon after, when Norma was back in her mother's house, tired and hungover, her mother tricked her into signing documents that legally granted custody of her daughter to her mother. Norma saw her daughter on and off over the years at her mother's whims. The next 4 years of Norma's life were a blurred kaleidoscope of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, odd jobs, carnival barking, drug dealing, and promiscuity with women and men. It was a tragic story of self-will run wild, resulting in 2 more babies being conceived. The first baby she immediately placed for adoption. The second baby, the Roe baby, she sought to abort.
A couple of years later, got pregnant again. Didn't want to have it. Didn't want it in my body. I wanted to kill it. I wanted to have an abortion. I went to an illegal abortion clinic in Dallas. I had $250 of my rent money saved up. There was nobody there. Well, I went to this attorney, and he treated me pretty much like a word I can't say anymore. He said that he just knew these 2 young law students who just graduated college, Sarah Weddington, Linda Coffey, and that they were trying to challenge the Texas statute on abortion. I mean, it just went right over my head. I mean, I didn't have a clue to what he was saying. And would I like to meet these 2 women? Sure.
We'll hear arguments number 18, Roe against Wade.
After the Roe versus Wade decision, Norma lived in relative anonymity with her lesbian partner in Texas until Norma came out as the Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade. In 1989, NBC released a made-for-TV movie based roughly on Norma's life. The Norma character was played by Holly Hunter. That movie and the press surrounding Norma's coming out propelled Norma into the public eye, where she remained for the rest of her life.
My name is Norma McCorvey, a.k.a. Jane Roe.
We must link arm in arm to protect and uphold the right to safe and legal abortion.
You were raped while you were in Georgia?
No, I wasn't.
As those years unfolded in Norma's life, I was founding and leading Operation Rescue, the largest peaceful civil disobedience movement in America's history. I was a guest on Oprah and Donahue and untold numbers of television programs. At that time, my name and the name of Operation Rescue were synonymous with pro-life activism and in-your-face controversy. On a personal note, to show how deeply antagonistic Norma's and my relationship was, the only pro-life group that she mentioned in I Am Roe was Operation Rescue, which I founded and led. The only pro-life leader she mentioned by name was me. The first time Norma and I came face to face was at a major pro-life protest we held in California. We were outside. Norma got as close to me as she could in the street and proceeded to blow a whistle in my ear with all her might, intermittently taunting and haranguing me. I in turn told her that she had blood on her hands, that millions of babies were dead because of her, that she would face the judgment of God, and that she should repent of what she had done and turn to Christ for forgiveness. And that is ultimately what she did.
When we were kids, my dad was a pastor, and he moved his office, his church office, next to the busiest abortion clinic in Dallas, Texas. And one of those employees there was Norma McCorvey of the Jane Roe, who was the Jane Roe in the Roe v. Wade Supreme Court case. Our dad came home and said, "Hey, I set my office next to the busiest abortion clinic in Dallas, Texas." And we're like, "Okay, Dad, that's great. That's awesome." And he said, "And I just found out that Norma McCorvey, who was the Jane Roe, Roe v. Wade, actually works there." And we're like, "Oh, that's cool." And he says, "And we're going to start sending her cookies and inviting her to lunch. We'll probably bring her and her lesbian partner, Connie, over for dinner." And we had Norma and her partner, Connie, over to our house for dinner. Dad would continually minister to her, and his secretary, Rhonda, with her two daughters, would make Norma cookies all the time. And, you know, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, and they're sending the cookies over there. And after 2 years, Miss Norma prays to receive Jesus Christ, but it didn't happen until she had a book signing. I Am Roe was the book, and she had this big book signing, and a lot of people were there. The press was there, and my dad was standing at the back.
When she was introducing her new book, I said Norma McCorvey, and I said it very loud because the police were keeping us far, far away. "Norma McCorvey, your lie ushered in the wholesale slaughter of over 35 million little baby boys and girls. You ought to be ashamed of yourself." And when I spoke those words, I knew that they fell into her heart.
And he comes walking out of nowhere like God himself, like the Messiah of all times. And he's got on his suit, and he's dashing. He looks great. And he tells me this, and he crushes me.
And that hurt me, and I know it grieved the Spirit of God, and I promised myself that if I ever had another opportunity to speak with her, I would apologize. And God provided that opportunity by allowing us to move here. And then one Saturday morning, I saw Miss Norma. There was nobody around except me in this office and Miss Norma on the other side. And I said, Miss Norma, I need to ask you something." And we sat over on that bench right over there.
She would always have a smoke break out in front of the abortion clinic, and they had a little metal bench. And he said, Miss Norma, he saw her out there smoking on the bench, and he said he knew that he needed to go and apologize to Miss Norma. So he goes up to her and sits down, and he said, Miss Norma, where do we go from here?" And she's just smoking. She's like, "I don't know, Flip." And she's still just mad at him.
And there I asked her to forgive me for those words that I had spoken. And you know what? She did.
That won my heart. When he sat on that bench in front of that abortion mill and said, "Norma, it's totally wrong. I apologize for saying that to you." remember if I said anything or not. I would have to look at Flip and see. But I do remember I went back into the mill, and I went into my office, and I closed my door, and I turned off my lights, and I cried.
And she began to see that there were people in this place right next to her that really did care about Norma McCorvey. So what happened is Miss Norma, after a couple of months, she gave her heart to Christ. I mean, and now you want to talk about news and media frenzy, it was amazing what happened, because now the whole world knew that the lady whose name, Roe, in Roe versus Wade, would now jumped off the poster of the pro-choice movement right into the arms of Jesus, and it was shocking.
Do you not feel that the Operation Rescue people want to get their mile of publicity out of this too, for their point, to make their point?
When these people from Operation Rescue call me at home now, they don't say, "Hey, Norma, I wanted you to come down to the office," or, "Hey, Norma, we're having a fundraiser. You can get in, and we're going to introduce you. We're going to acknowledge the fact that you're there, but we don't want you to speak because you're a loose cannon, and we don't want really loose cannons around, but we really do need you there because you're Jane Roe, and we don't have any other choice." So go figure.
You're saying that's the way you were used by the pro-choice movement?
Yes, sir.
They asked me on ABC, "Are you going to make her a trophy now of your cause?" And I said, "No, she's no trophy of my cause. She is a planting of the Lord for the display of his splendor, and everyone who sees her is going to know that there is a Jesus and that he is the answer." You see, those in the pro-choice movement who are so worried about us using Miss Norma now were the ones that used her brutally. They would take her name, they would parade her out, they would do everything that they could so that would further their cause, and they were always concerned about the cause and never the person. They loved Jane Roe, the name that signed the class action suit. They were always embarrassed of Norma McCorvey, the lady from the other side of the tracks, who confessed her homosexuality, who confessed the fact that she was an alcoholic, that she did drugs, that she attempted to take her life. They were always embarrassed of her. It's interesting to me that the media never covered that part of her life. But one of the things that she found out is that there was a Jesus who loved Norma McCorvey and was not ashamed of her past. He loved her. Norma McCorvey was confronted with her sin. She knew it was wrong in her heart, but she never had anyone somehow communicate that to her in a way that just would plunge into her heart and change her.
Every day I was there, I asked her to go to church.
And so God was speaking through these precious little girls to her heart, to Miss Connie's heart that was her lesbian lover at the time, and to all of the other abortion mill employees there.
But our dad taught us if your theology is not your biography, then your theology is worthless.
And God began to do amazing things. Now, what did we do? We just showed up. We just got there. I didn't plan this out and orchestrate it so that we could, be there and we were going to win Norma McCorvey to Jesus. I didn't think about that at all. As a matter of fact, we thought that we'd get the abortion mill moved out of there the day that we moved in. And of course, it didn't work out that way. Someone else was supposed to baptize her. She called me up a few days before and said, "Flip, would you do this for me, please?" And I said, "Miss Norma, it would be my honor." And now, moving into this brand new worldview, to this brand new family, she is baptized. The old Jane Roe is gone. And when she came out of that water, it was as if 35 years of rough road came off her face. Then there was this beautiful smile on her face. She was free, she was forgiven, and she was a new creation in God. And she dedicated her life to be a voice for these voiceless children.
I'm a Jesus freak. It's the best thing in the world that could ever happen to a young woman is to love God and to love his word and to be his servant.
Norma Leah McCorvey, I baptize you in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. and sisters, Miss Norma Leah McCorvey, born again.
The woman who was cited in Roe versus Wade, you couldn't have come further, could you? Away from that initial decision, which used your name in the case to come up with a Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion. You've turned full circle, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Completely. And I'm very proud of that. I'm proud to know that I don't have to go into another abortion clinic and watch women come out of abortion procedures crying and wanting to call their mothers. I don't have to look at dismembered bodies of children who've been ripped out of their mother's wombs. I don't have those nightmares anymore. I refuse to have those nightmares.
Well, a new documentary is expected to show the woman at the center of the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion was paid by pro-life groups to say things that she did not believe.
AKA Jane Roe is a documentary about Norma McCorvey, who was the real Jane Roe in the famous case of Roe versus Wade.
She got thrown into the public spotlight in the most insane way, and her life changed forever.
Norma, you've allowed the killing of over 35 million children.
You don't want to with me.
Norma was seen as a symbol for pro-choice.
They needed a poor woman who could not afford to travel to one of the states where abortion was legal.
I'm saddened that other people want to abolish something that women should naturally already have.
So later, it was stunning when she swapped sides and became a real leader in the pro-life movement.
I have vowed to help do anything to overturn Roe versus Wade.
Jane Roe was now on our side. We were winning this social war.
Nick had unprecedented access to Norma because I think she realized she was at the end of her life. She was able to open up to Nick in a very intimate and confessional way.
It's my mind. They can't tell me how to think.
People thought that they knew Norma's story. People that had written her off were very surprised when Nick was showing them some interviews with her. He brought a laptop and he played for them Norma's last words and thoughts.
Okay.
Gloria Allred, one of the most media-trained people in America, is left speechless by the things that Norma says.
Wow. I wish that Norma would have seen the interview with Rob before she passed.
I had never heard her say anything like this.
I got goosebumps. My daughter had no idea who Norma McCorvey was. I felt it was very important to make sure that that gets told.
It was written in the book of life that I get stomped on, but then in the end I would prevail.
Roe versus Wade has been one of the most important cases in American history and is more relevant now than it's ever been before. But at the center of it is this individual, this personal story, and I'm so excited that an audience will get to see it and learn who Jane Roe really was.
That's the name of that game. Well, you know, a lot of people take quotes and they misconstrue them, and they turn them around to suit their own needs. The whole abortion industry was based on a foundation of lies.
This is what we see the media do. Media does this. Hollywood producers do this. They take statements or they take deathbed confessions from a woman who was heavily medicated. By the way, Miss Norma called me. I actually spoke to her on the phone before she died. And she was in Texas. She was heavily medicated. She was really sick. And she needed some help. And she knew exactly which family to call. And she called the Benham family, and the Benham family came around her, and the Benham family helped her out. Now, did these folks reach out to me and Jason about Norma McCorvey? And did they release this before she died? You could have done this 20 years ago. You could have done it 15 years ago. You could have done it 10 years, 5 years. You could have even done it 2 years ago. Put this movie out while Norma McCorvey is still alive, because you know good and well Jason and I would have gone right to Texas, and I would have gotten a soundbite from Miss Norma where she would have been like, what? You know, look at what they're doing. Look at this narrative that's circulating. But it's so convenient that you release it after she dies. So Roe v. Wade was birthed in a lie. And the trying to dismantle the story of what Jesus Christ did in someone's life is also based in a lie. And this just shows how desperate the radical left is and desperate pro-abortion proponents are, is that they take a dead woman, they try to unravel her legacy, and they did get some pretty outrageous confessions and statements. I don't doubt that. That's Miss Norma. That's how Miss Norma was. But they're now trying to create this entire lie. The power of Jesus is mighty to save. The power of Jesus is the answer. The power of Jesus Christ is what we have, that we have a sure foundation.
The pro-lifers here have shown me what it's like to be a human being for the very first time in my whole life. They've loved me, they've nurtured me, and they've cared for me. I've never felt so good about being a woman or about being just a person than I have from these people. Abortion is one of the worst holocausts that the world has ever seen. People misunderstand that it's not my body, my choice, my rights. It's the taking of the seed of man that's implanted in a woman's womb that brings life. That life should never be stopped. Only by one person, and that's the Lord Jesus Christ.